It's my moment of ecumenical flavor. All right. Hi there. Welcome to our weekly online Bible study through the AuSable Inclusion Center. I am Deacon Beck Leclaire. I'm the ministry developer here at the AuSable Inclusion Center. And every Wednesday, we gather online at noon to study the Bible. We also do so in person at 789 Rhino Road, Mayo, Michigan, at 4 p.m. To study the Bible together. During this most recent season, we've been working our way through the book of Psalms. We are on, I believe, Unit 7, so week 7 of this process of looking over the Psalms. Last week, we looked at Psalm 99, which discusses this kind of kingly vision of God, God as the ideal king. We talked extensively about the context of ancient Near Eastern thought on kingship and monarchy and the reality that humans fail to be good kings, that God is the only truly good king. This week, we are shifting to another fairly familiar psalm, Psalm 121, which Psalm 121, verse 1, I lift up my eyes to the hills, from where is my help to come, is a really commonly repeated statement of faith throughout the Jewish and Christian tradition. So we're going to talk a bit about Psalm 121. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read Psalm 121. Once again, as a reminder, I am reading it from the Episcopal Book of Common Prayer. So if you are reading the psalm, whether that is in a Bible translation or another place where you might encounter the Psalms, just know that there may be some differences between this translation and adaptation of the psalm and the one that you're reading. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where is my help to come? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved, and he who watches over you will not fall asleep. Behold, he who keeps watch over Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand, so that the sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve you from all evil. It is he who shall keep you safe. The Lord shall watch over your going out and your coming in from this time forth forevermore. So, before we start talking about the psalm, I want us to envision something, and it will make sense why I'm encouraging us to envision this once we get there. But I want you to imagine that you're going on a long journey, a pilgrimage. You are in ancient Near Eastern Jew, and you are traveling to Jerusalem for one of the appointed feasts. And so you are traveling through the Palestinian countryside to go to God's holy temple, the place where God literally dwells. And you're making this journey through robber-infested hills, and it just so happens that in these hills, specifically the hilltops, there are all of these temples to other gods. You may consider them to be false gods, but they're nonetheless considered to be deities with power, spiritual power. Regardless, while you're traveling you're out in the wilderness, you cannot see what is in those hills. When we think about like up north, right? It's hilly up here and forested. Oscoda County is the least populated county in lower Michigan, and you can drive for miles along some of the like county level roads, not the like state highways, but like the county level roads. You can drive for miles and never see a sign of humanity other than the road itself. Right? You don't know what's beyond the road, and you may not be able to see the road for very far because of the hills themselves. Traveling through the hills necessarily means that your point of view is limited by the hills themselves. And the sun is beating down on you. You know, we're returning to this image of being a pilgrim traveling through the Palestinian countryside. The sun is beating down on you. It's so hot. But you're traveling with other pilgrims. And those pilgrims share your faith. They're journeying alongside you to the same place for the same reason. And they also share your anxieties because they're in the same context as you. And so what do you do to get by? You know, well, when we're on a road trip, what do? We sing songs, right? I have a playlist on my favorite music streaming app called Road Trip Singing, because one of the time-honored traditions of people on journeys is to sing songs that everybody on the journey knows as a form of camaraderie, as a way of expressing some emotion, maybe letting some of those emotions that come up when you encounter stuff along the journey, letting those emotions out. It's a great way of bonding and making the journey more pleasant. You don't usually ride in the car in complete silence, right? Same concept here. Psalm 121 is a pilgrim song. It arises out of this tradition of going on a long journey together and dealing with the feelings that you're feeling along that journey, but being in community and singing together and reinforcing one another, encouraging one another through the song that you sing. So Psalm 121 is considered to be a pilgrim song, and there are some signs of that. But one of the clear indicators of like the way that the psalm speaks to this kind of pilgrim song journeying experience is that there's some call and response going on. I don't know if you picked up on that when I did the read through, so let's look a little bit closer. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Remember, the hills are not comforting. They're not inspiring. They're scary. So I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where is my help to come? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. So we're speaking in the first person. Now let's notice in verse 3, we're shifting from first person to second person. He will not let your foot be moved, and he who watches over you will not fall asleep. A little bit of context here. Remember those false gods whose temples or little shrines are at the tops of all of these little hills? Because those are considered to be the places where those deities dwelled, at the tops of the hills. Most of these deities in the ancient Near East at this time had kind of sleep-wake cycles that aligned with the seasons. Most, I think, modern thinkers may call to mind the story of Persephone, and how Persephone, the goddess of spring in some Greek cultures, would go down to the underworld to be with her husband, who may or may not have been her consensual husband, Hades, for the winter season. And as such, during that season, her mother, Demeter, who was the goddess of the harvest, would be mourning, and that's why all of everything would die during the winter. It would be cold and dark, and stuff would die. But then in the spring, Persephone would come back from the underworld, and everything would come back to life because she's the goddess of spring. And she's Demeter's daughter, and she helps Demeter out doing, stuff to make stuff grow. That's a really common trope across Near Eastern cultures as a way of understanding why the world is the way it is. Well, everything is dead because the gods are sleeping, or they're dead, and they'll resurrect again in the spring. These are really, really common tropes. And so when the psalmist is declaring that God, he who watches over you, will not fall asleep. And then there's this thought here that among scholars that verses 3 and 4 are kind of a call and response. Like you've had one person speaking in the first person in verses 1 and 2, and then someone comes in at verse 3 in response to that, and then either the first person or maybe somebody else comes back and builds on what's said in verse 3. It's kind of like a conversation. Behold, he who keeps watch over Israel. So again, there's this vision here of like a conversation where folks are like talking about God, and as they're journeying along this pilgrim road and observing the hills that have all of these deities atop them, those deities go to sleep at some point and don't take care of the people while they're sleeping. That's why winter sucks, is because the gods are no longer taking care of you. You're on your own, kid. But that's not the perspective of the psalmist. That's not the theology about God that they have. They have a belief that our God, Yahweh, the God of Abraham, this God does not slumber or sleep. This God is always keeping watch. And also, calling back to verse 2, this God is the maker of heaven and earth, the most powerful, the creator God. So we've got that going on too. And then we get into verse 5. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. Again, like shade, think about that image. When you are journeying on a hot, dusty road, how delightful the thought of shade is. But there's more to that. And in fact, we get a little bit of that in verse 6. So that the sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. Striking in this case doesn't just mean like it's really hot and I'm feeling stricken by the sun. Again, Near Eastern ancient context, there were peoples in this region who considered the sun and moon themselves to be gods or goddesses, with spiritual power that could harm you. And so saying here that Yahweh, the God, the creator of heaven and earth, of all that is and ever shall be, that God is your shade, like a parasol, protecting you from a literal spiritual harm, yes, from the sun, another potential god or goddess, and the moon, another potential god or goddess. So this isn't just like a statement of like comfort about like the practicality of your physical experience. It's also a statement of protection spiritually from other powers that may be. And especially if you're a pilgrim and you're like journeying on a treacherous road to go to the place where your God dwells, in order to like pay homage and worship, that statement of belief that this God is going to protect you from all of the things is not just a word of comfort, but a word of encouragement to continue your journey. And to that end, verse 7, the Lord shall preserve you from all evil. It is he who shall keep you safe. The Lord shall watch over your going out and your coming in from this time forth forevermore. Verse 8 is like really important to think about going out and coming in the context of pilgrimage. This is to say that God is going to protect you through your whole journey. You're going out and you're coming in. Whether that's you're going out to the temple and then you're returning home, or you're coming into the temple and then you're going out into the world. Both. So both and. And I think there's a place here to think about this in our own lives. That life, in a sense, is a pilgrimage. We talk, particularly in the Christian context, about our lives as being journeys. We're born, we live our lives, and then after we've lived our earthly life, we go on to our eternal glory. You know, we're passing through to get to another destination. And if we think about this pilgrimage as a metaphor for our life, and we think about Psalm 121 as being a pilgrimage song, what does this have to say to us in the journey of our life? We all encounter times in our lives where we may feel completely surrounded by hardship and trouble. And we may wonder, as we look at all of the hardship and trouble around us, where is my help to come? I cannot do this on my own. This is too hard. I need help. Where is my help to come? And our statement of faith here is, my help comes from the Lord. And my Lord, my God, is the maker of heaven and earth, my personal God that cares for me, is the creator of everything. The most powerful thing, the most powerful being in and outside of and around the universe is my help and my protection. That is a wildly encouraging statement. That is food for the journey. And when we think about, we modern people don't tend to think about the world as being filled with all of these like spiritual forces that can beset us on all sides and are like conspiring to make our lives worse and harder, get between us and God. But like, there is no denying that there are powers in this world that are more powerful than any one of us. There is no denying that there are forces beyond our control. That is part of our life as humans. That there are systems and powers and principalities that are bigger and stronger than we as individuals are, or even like us in our like specific communities. Which is why having God to rely on is such a source of comfort and power itself. It's why people have been able to have the courage to face down those powers and principalities. It's why people have had the courage to persevere and survive in the face of adversarial powers beyond their control. Even if that adversarial power beyond your control is something like illness. We don't have control over cancer. You can do everything right. You can live the most healthful life. You can follow all the best guidelines. You can still get cancer. If you live long enough, it is just a condition of old age that you will eventually develop cancer because those telomeres at the end of your DNA after your cells have split a certain number of times are going to degrade, and as a consequence, cancer is almost inevitable. We don't have control over that. That doesn't mean that we stop our journey. It doesn't mean we sit down in the dirt and say, okay, I'm done. We stay on our journey and we continue walking our journey because we know that our help comes from God. That doesn't mean that we sit down and wait for God to like save us. Like God isn't going to like pick us up and plop us in the temple. Right? It's still our job as pilgrims to walk the road. But along the road, we can rely upon the help and protection of God. So Beck has been surprisingly direct and concise this particular day. So that is what I've got to say. I wonder what times in your life you have felt like you were beset on all sides, surrounded by dangerous hills, and you looked up upon those hills and wondered how the heck you were going to keep going. I wonder if you're feeling that way right now. And how you can put your trust in God to get you through. Because I want you to know that just as our ancestors have spoke to us before about the things that God has done for them, God has done great things for me. God has probably done great things for you and will continue to do so. We are a people of prayer, and so let us pray. If you have a Book of Common Prayer at hand, I am turning to page 832. I have already, in fact, done so. We're going to turn to page 832, and we are going to pray for protection. Assist us mercifully, O Lord, in these our supplications and prayers, and dispose the way of your servants towards the attainment of everlasting salvation, that among all the changes and chances of this mortal life, we may ever be defended by your gracious and ready help. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you for joining me today for our weekly online Bible study. If you'd like to join us in person, today we gather at 4 p.m. For our Bible study. Our in-person conversations are always delightful and far more expansive and creative than anything Deacon Beck can word vomit at you. Additionally, this Friday is the final Friday of the month, and you know what that means. That means it's free film night. This month, we're going to continue the theme of Valentine's Day with a little romance, but also an exploration of leading a moral life and growing as a person. We are watching Howl's Moving Castle, a wonderful Studio Ghibli film, Ghibli Studio Ghibli film. The movie starts at 7:30, doors open at 6:30. The film is free to see. If you would like to enjoy some pop or popcorn, we have each available for $1. So I look forward to seeing you on site either this afternoon at 4 o'clock or this Friday at 7 p.m. for free film night. If not, I'll see you back here next week on Wednesday at noon as we continue our exploration of the Book of Psalms. So, y'all take care and have a wonderful, wonderful week.